Hello and welcome to Game 2 of the New York City Netrunner March Final. In this game, we'll see the tournament winner running their Haas-Bioroid deck and the tournament runner-up running their Chaos Theory deck. Again, these two decks will include cards through the Cyber Exodus expansion, as Study and Static has not yet come out. The core player here has not mulliganed, and the runner has. Corp installs an Enigma on R&D for his first action, gaining a credit. Installs a Wall of Static on HQ as his second action. There he's just remembering his mandatory draw. Looks like it was an Ichi, also had a Giannis in hand, and an Agenda. Takes a credit and passes it over to the runner. So here we can see the runner has one Femme Fatale. Looks like he's considering being aggressive on his first couple of runs. A Magnum Opus, a personal workshop, what looks like a Gordian Blade, and a Dinosaurus. That is a really strong opening hand, and I'm, again, surprised he's running. Neurokatana is a scary card. He hits the Enigma, just loses the credit. Could run HQ. We'll just see the Wall of Static, so it's not particularly scary anymore, as the Corp doesn't have the 7 credits. Actually, he did have enough credits for Neurokatana. So that's a Wall of Static. The light levels were a little tough. I had to adjust, so you'll see that the cards become a little more readable later on in this video. There you can see his click counter. He's taken his 3 actions, well, 2 actions plus the Enigma Drain, so he has 1 action remaining. We'll see if he takes credits or installs something. I mean, pretty much, there's no reason to not install Magnum Opus at this point. You know, you may have lost a couple of credits, but there's no reason to not install Magnum Opus, unless you're worried about your memory. That is one of the few reasons. Magnum Opus takes up a lot of memory, but his build doesn't look like it's worried about memory, seeing as he's just got a Femme Fatale, a Gordian Blade, and it's Chaos Theory to begin with. She has 5 MU. He drops the Personal Workshop into play for 1 and passes it over to the Corp. Corp draws into a Vitruvius, installs a Rototart on his remote server, gaining a credit. Looks like he also has a Beta Test in hand, kicks a couple credits, and passes it back to the runner. Runner uses his first action to draw a Rabbit Hole, drops the Magnum Opus onto the Personal Workshop. I always find that interesting. I haven't actually looked at the efficiency of that. I don't think that's the best play, because what happens is every time you take a click, you've effectively lost. Every time you take a credit, you've effectively lost a credit when not installing Magnum Opus. But if you are going to draw, if you think it's going to take a few turns before you even want to install the Magnum Opus, there's no reason to put it on, not to put it on the Personal Workshop. I just feel that you usually want to get the Magnum Opus in play as fast as possible. But I do like the idea of putting your whole rig on the Personal Workshop and then pushing the Magnum Opus into play and installing cards from it. It's interesting, certainly interesting. Passes it back to the Corp. The Corp draws into a mandatory upgrades. Rather unfortunate, but there's not a ton that the runner can do right now. He could run, so he does save to put his credits in reserve, as he could make a run on a remote with some credit accelerating cards like Easy Mark. We know he doesn't have it, but the Corp doesn't know that. So this is not a particularly great hand on the Corp side. He doesn't have good defenses on that server. But he does install the Vitruvius. Good choice to not install the Beta Test, as he doesn't risk losing the Beta Test. So even if the runner does score the Vitruvius, he'll have the Beta Test for later turns. Advances at 1. Everybody has to be afraid of Aggressive Secretary out of Haas-Bioroid. No installed programs yet. It makes it rather interesting, though. I don't think he can res the Rototary and activate it. So that doesn't work as well as a bluff. Now, I have the advantage of knowing that Haas-Bioroid deck does not run any aggressive secretaries. Here, the runner has a Tinkering hand, Rabbit Hole, Femme, and the Dinosaurus. He drew into the Tinkering this turn, it looks like. Draws the Test Run on his second action. Or it could be his first action. He's not actually ticking off his action marker, and I missed it. Test Run in this case will be interesting. He can pretty much have his he can have his full rig up very quickly here, but he's going to need the credits to do so. So I wouldn't be surprised if he pushes Magnum Opus into play. No, wow, he chooses to run the test run. So this is probably going to be a Femme Fatale and then run on the unresed card with the advancement token. So he just pops on the Femme on the ice and runs it. Again, test run with Femme Fatale is basically an inside job for Shaper. It's really interesting, especially with Personal Workshop. You then just draw the the femme fatale and throw it on the workshop, and eventually you get another inside job. Now, he is gambling a little in that that is not an aggressive secretary, because if it is an aggressive secretary, he is going to lose one of his femme fatales. Maybe not a big deal, because obviously test run can get out of the heap, but it could be a factor. So he scores the Vitruvius, the single advanced Vitruvius, basically scoring 2 points and denying the corp of 2 credits in the process, the 1 opportunity for not taking credit and the 1 credit he spent to actually advance it. Corp installs an ice on his remote, getting a credit, and then looks like he's simply going to take 2 more credits, pass it back to the runner. Runner keeps ticking off of the magnum opus on personal workshop. I'm still surprised he hasn't thrown it into play, but obviously you can see there was some benefit as he was able to test run and score that card in the remote server. But he could have done that even if he had installed the magnum opus, because he could have just taken credits to make up for it. So magnum opus is just slowly ticking off here. See what he does. He could push the Gordian Blade into play to run R&D, but he again doesn't have the credits because he doesn't have magnum opus in play right now. So it's interesting to see him not trying to push that magnum opus into play. I'm also a little bit surprised by the rabbit holes. He runs Gordian Blade, so rabbit hole isn't for Zoo, it's explicitly for the Link. There is an Aesop's Pawn Shop in the deck. He does draw it later, so it could be that it combos with that, and that he just likes to have the versatility of having Link or trashing it for the money from Aesop's. It's just an interesting choice. I'm not sure Aesop's is worth it for 1 card. I didn't really see him trash other cards, so we're going to have to watch the video play out, see if he did in fact trash anything but rabbit holes. Mandatory draw. The runner pushed magnum opus into play. Looks like he draws into an Adonis campaign. Still has a Giannis and what looks like an Ichi and 2 agendas in hand. Installs the Adonis in the remote, gaining a credit, and installs the Ichi on HQ, protecting his hand of agendas. Good moves. That's a pretty well protected HQ there. He doesn't have the barrier breaker to get in, and now Ichi will also cause him issues if he chooses to run there. Still in a beneficial position to start running R&D and dictating what the corp is drawing. I love doing that. I don't know that it's always the best move, but I can honestly say, if I can dictate what the corp is drawing, I am very happy to do so. He installs the Femme on the personal workshop. Still has 3 actions remaining. I doubt he's going to take credits. The Femme could push him through something, but he really needs a barrier breaker right now. He might also put the Dinosaurus on the workshop in the event that he draws into a barrier breaker. But you know, he has 3 cards in hand. He can draw 2 cards and still not be at a point where he has to worry about discarding. So draws the Femme. He test run. Let's see if he drops that onto the personal workshop. I would just draw in this situation since I'm not at full, but he takes 2 credits, and then last action he is going to run R&D, which I think is a good move because it's only going to cost him the 1 credit. It's a little daring. He does not know that the HB does not run Snare. Sees an Ash. You got to trash that. He has a rabbit hole in hand to kind of deny it, but at this point you just got to trash it. It's not worth letting the corp have it. But he could also choose to not trash it, and corp draws into a Biotic Labor, and then just let the corp draw, play out his hand, and just see the next card next turn if the corp doesn't install anything on the R&D. Corp reses his Adonis. He doesn't have a ton to do. Pretty good move to install something on R&D. That is a very strong move because now he slows down the runner's ability to run R&D every turn. He can't dictate the draw any longer. Passes it back to the runner. Runner now has 4 unresed ice. Chooses to draw for first action, getting another test run. Let's see what he test runs here. I would not be surprised to see him play the Dinosaurus onto the workshop and possibly test run a barrier breaker. It would be fairly powerful because he would be able to he'd be able to be very aggressive if he did so. Looks like he drops a rabbit hole onto the workshop. Let's see if he draws any more cards. He again he needs to get a barrier breaker into play if he wants to put any pressure on the corp right now. The corp he needs a sentry breaker too, but at least he has the Femme Fatale in the event that something like a Rototurret comes out. Takes some credits and passes it back to the corp. Corp draws into another agenda. Oh my goodness. Now, he does have the money to biotic labor the beta test, but he hasn't precogged yet. So I'm not sure if he will do that. And his HQ is fairly well defended. Draws a second card, getting a hedge fund. Oh, that would make me unhappy as a runner. HB with money to actually res ice is never a good thing. So he's counting asking the runner how many cards he had in hand. You can see his wall of static and rototurret on the remote, the Ichi on HQ, and I already forgot what was on R&D. So that's a handful of agendas. It is a little scary, but again, Corp doesn't have a barrier breaker, so it's not really a big deal. Chooses to draw his last action, getting a toll booth. Another good scary ice out of HB. So let's see what he does. Ticks one off of the rabbit hole. So either he's expecting Link or he expects to draw a pawn shop to be able to pawn off that Link. Now, the one nice thing is that rabbit hole will be beneficial against Ichi, but there's no Ichi on the board right now. So the value is currently questionable. Costs him a full 5 credits to push that into play. Deck thinning is always a good thing, but the Link benefit's not as good. I assume he's going to have Aesop's pawn shops. He must have 3 to make that actually a valuable move. I know my Chaos Theory deck, I don't like Link. I haven't played it much at all, but I haven't really found a use for Link. You also don't see it out of Anarch and anything, even though it's a very cheap influence, so I'm not sure how great it is. But he has 4 actions remaining. Chooses to draw for his first action, draws into a second Dinosaurus. I would continue, if I were him, I would either use that test run or to get the barrier breaker, or do what he did, take money and try and draw into it. Oh my goodness, Corp draws into a precog. That is rough. So he can precog here, set up his R&D however he chooses to do, installs Toll Booth on HQ. Very nice, because now that HQ is pretty much impervious to anything. His precog is a Biotic Labor, a Biotic Labor, a Private Security Force, a Melange, a Toll Booth, and I believe an Ichi. So he's got a pretty powerful one there. Now you can see he's putting the Biotic Labor on top, then the Melange, 2 ice, and the agenda. You want, if I were him, I might just put the 2 Toll Booths and the Melange on top, and put the agenda last after the Biotic Labor. He is making a pretty big mistake here. He put those cards in the reverse order of what he should. If he makes a mistake, okay, he caught his mistake. If he had done that, it would have been that would have been a really bad beta test after a precog. So he's going to shuffle it up. I assume he's going to put the 2 ice on top, or at least put himself in a position where the runner can't get to the cards he wants to do it. The good move here would be to put the Biotic Labor, which I think is in fact what he does. Put the Biotic Labor on top so that he draws into that, put the 2 ice, and then either the Melange is a 3rd card to trash, or the Private Security Force is a 3rd card to trash. I would not want the Private Security Force in my discard, as that would mean that the runner gets 2 free points, and the runner only needs 6 points to win the game, of which he currently does have 2. So I would be very wary of putting a security force down in my archives. I have won many a game by running archives the turn before I thought the opponent was going to win the game. So it's a very, very risky thing to do, especially due to the match point system that is used for tournaments. So Corp, again, 5 unres dice right now. There was just a precog, so is there any value in running R&D? He still needs a barrier breaker. He just spent a bunch of credits on those rabbit holes. What is his best move here? Probably to try and draw into the barrier breaker again, or use the test run to go get a barrier breaker. There's not always... Oh, wow, an inside job. Very interesting. Very interesting. That'll allow him to run R&D if he chooses to do so, though I don't see a huge benefit in doing that. I would save that if I were him, to try and sneak into that remote by using the inside job to bypass first ice, and then popping in the Femme Fatale if it's needed on the second ice. Thinking very hard here, though. We know that there's an advantage of him running HQ, but he obviously does not know that, and it would be a horrible gamble to do that right here. The Corp has had such a good draw, or appears to have had such a good draw that he's got the precog, he's got biotic labors. You know, it's a risky run here. I don't know if the runner actually knows the Corp has biotic labors, but all right. So is this the biotic labor turn for the ABT? I have to assume so, because that Adonis is just pretty much going to pay for the entire thing. That one Adonis paid for this whole combo. He pays the 4, installs, and then scores the ABT. You can see him installing in the remote to taunt the runner. The ABT goes off. He sees the security force. He sees the toll booth. He sees the Heimdall. So it was a Heimdall instead of an Ichi. Now, where do you install this? I really want to protect the remote if I were him, so I'd probably throw down the toll booth on the remote and throw down the Heimdall on R&D, because that will just slow the R&D runs to a crawl. He has cards in his hand, but his HQ is already so well defended, there's no reason to add more to it. So he does just that. Toll booth on the remote, the Heimdall on R&D, and let's see how the runner responds. He still has his Dinosaurus ticking off and his Fem ticking off. He has a decent amount of credits and some versatility, but there's nothing on the board anymore. If he wants anything, he has to run R&D, where there's a Heimdall, or run HQ and chance that he doesn't get anything. And we know there's about a 50% chance of him getting anything out of HQ, because the Corp has 2 agendas in there. So his runs, he's in a position where he needs to just take credits or try and force the Corp to spend money over on his R&D, running through that Heimdall and then trying to get him to res the second card to waste money. One of the bad things about fast advance is you do need money. So obviously he's in a dilemma here. I would definitely be drawing. I still want that barrier breaker. He doesn't need any MU to play it, so I personally would just want that barrier breaker. It looks like he's saving the test run for another Femme Fatale. He does still have one in the deck, so getting money here money's never a bad thing either. So taking 8 credits and sitting on it's not a bad move either. He still has the ability to inside job Femme Fatale if he needs to. Corp installs, look like the mandatory upgrades in his remote, and advances it twice. Passes it back to the runner. See what the runner does. Ticks another credit off of Femme Fatale. Has a lot of money, has the inside job, has a Gordian Blade. So his only real issue is if there is a barrier there. He can run inside job the first card if he wants. I probably would do so because it's more expensive to break the toll booth. There is a slight chance again that that's an aggressive secretary. And if it's an aggressive secretary, that could lose him the game instantly, because he'll lose a Magnum Opus, he'll lose a Gordian Blade, and the runner can do, or the Corp can just kind of do whatever he wants for a few turns. So it'll be rather interesting. I tend to destroy icebreakers when I use aggressive secretary, because I know money is good, but less icebreakers is a bad thing, because that means they have to reinstall it, they have to draw it, they have to actually run the multiples. It's an interesting dilemma. But here he can inside job, like I said, bypass the first one, hit the second ice if it's into Gordian Blade. If it's a Sentry or Code Gate, he just breaks it by installing the Femme Fatale and Femme Fatale's third ice. In the event that it is just a Code Gate, he just breaks it and then hits the third ice. He may not even need to install. Oh, Femme Fatale out of hand. Sorry, test run Femme Fatale. Okay. This is the first time I've seen Femme Fatale chained with Personal Workshop so effectively. It's very interesting play. I tend to use test run for my Crypsis, so this may give me a new way to play my test runs, which is kind of amusing. He's using his test runs as kind of modified inside jobs, which is going to be incredibly powerful. I do like it, and I may, for my Shaper Kate deck, start to use them in a similar way. I assume he's going to inside job here, giving him pretty much free reign on accessing those cards. His only problem is if it's an aggressive secretary. If it's an aggressive secretary, he's going to lose 2 Femme Fatales to the archives if he has to install the second Femme Fatale. And it's just going to be bad. he'll already have his last Femme Fatale in hand, so it's not like he can test run, or he'll have to draw into a test run to be able to use that trick again. That's a lot of, it's interesting, it's a lot of inside jobbing. He's actually playing this as a more like criminal than he is Shaper. Very, very interesting. So he scored 4 points on the power of inside job test run Femme Fatale. Very, very obviously powerful. You can see he has a Maker's Eye. So this is a very heavy event deck. He's trying to abuse the power of inside job, Femme Fatale, test run, Maker's Eye, and tinkering. And I have to say I do like the build. I'm not sure what the weakness would be. The weakness is probably late game. But having so many Femme Fatales and being able to get through stuff so cheaply is very powerful. So Corp draws into another precog. My goodness. Good thing he doesn't have another Biotic Labor. Oh wait, he does! Installs, gaining a credit. Not sure what that was. Looked like it might have been the Vitruvius. The runner doesn't have a ton of money, so that was a good move. Oh no, it wasn't the Vitruvius. So that's just probably Adonis or something. Draws into an Ash. Ash is such a powerful card. So that may be why the runner got the Rabbit Holes. I didn't think about that when I was considering the efficiency of Rabbit Hole against an HB deck. It does help a lot with Ash. Shutting down Ash is not an insignificant consideration nowadays. Ash is very good out of multiple decks. NBN is very good out of to increase the odds of getting your red herrings or anything that cancels. Especially when Ash can protect the red herrings and the red herrings can protect the agenda. It gets a little silly. I tend to do that when I'm trying to do a mandatory upgrades deck out of HB. It's just frustrating to hit Ash and then have to hit red herrings after trashing the Ash. So here he has 2 actions remaining in his turn. Has a Magnum Opus, Maker's Eye, Femme Fatale. This deck does not appear to have a lot of staying power. It's a criminal. It really is a criminal deck in a lot of respects. In that it's just designed to trick past all of your ice. It's nice in that it's a 40 card deck, so you get to your tricks faster. But at the same time, if the Corp outplays you and actually gets you to hit traps and actually gets you to hit Ashes and red herrings, your tricks are gone. So I'd be concerned playing this deck about the late game staying power. Magnum Opus obviously helps. Dinosaurus obviously helps, but late game staying power does not appear like it would be the strength of this deck, especially against HB. This may just be a bad matchup for this deck. Ironically, with his 4 points right now, if he ran Archives, he would win the match because he would have 6 points for a total of 16 match points instantly just by scoring that to the Corp's 15, and he would automatically win the match. So that was why earlier you may have heard me say that putting the Security Force in Archives was a bad idea. That would be why. He can very easily just win right now. So here he tinkers the second ice. Very good move because now he can just click through the Heimdall or even Femme Fatale past it. Uses a Maker's Eye. We'll see if he uses the Femme Fatale on the Heimdall. Clearly is going to pay off the Femme Fatale and push it into play off of the Personal Workshop. He doesn't really need to use it on the Enigma. He might use it on the Toll Booth. No, he does use it on the Heimdall. Interesting. Interesting. The staying power would have been to use it on the Toll Booth so that he could really get into that server easily. He may think he's going to win the game or win the match off of this, though. So he pays 3, in addition to the cost of pushing the Femme Fatale into play, to bypass the Heimdall. The Tinkered Ice is going to be rezzed, and it looks like it's a Giannis. Very interesting. The Corp actually miscounted on this, and you might hear him say so, by 1 credit. He thought that the runner only had 2 cards in hand, when in fact he actually had 3 cards in hand. So he is not totally shut down by this Giannis to the point that if he had the 1 less card in hand, he'd have to break an additional Giannis subroutine and be unable to get through the Enigma. But either way, the Giannis is going to cause the runner to take 2 brain damage, at the very least. So Giannis is a scary card. Very powerful, very scary. So here, I think he's trying to decide how to get through this. The right decision is just to take the 2 brain damage, save up the credits so you can actually beat the Enigma. And he does have the money to do so. He does have to pay... He only has to use Gordian Blade to break it as well, so it's not like he's going to have to use the Femme Fatale and pay double credits to get up to strength. So it's going to cost him 6 to go up, 2 to break 2 of the brain damage, and then he'll have 1 remaining for the Enigma. He will wind up with 2 total brain damage. Possibly 3, sorry. He actually takes 3 brain damage here because he doesn't have that extra credit. So there's the 3 brain damage. He accesses 1, sees an Ash, can't trash it. So this is 2, sees the Heimdall, can't do anything with that, and 3, sees an Ichi. Ooh. That is rough. Had he seen a single agenda there, that was the game. And I think that was the gamble he took, and he did not see an agenda. It's actually been kind of similar. They've both drawn a lot of agendas in their first 15 or 20 cards. Still see that precog. Here, he advances, or sorry, Rez's Melange. Ugh, you don't want to see HP with money. That's just unsatisfying. He has to discard a card here. I wouldn't be surprised to see him discard an Ash. Looked like he actually discarded precog, so he must not be thinking about accelerated beta test later. Tick off of Dinosaurus. Corp draws into Femme Fatale. Corp draws into a Diesel. Probably going to use the Diesel here and throw something on the workshop. Well, actually, he only has a 2-hand size. He may just take credits, which he does. He passes back to the Corp. Corp draws into that Heimdall. This is a very interesting hand. The mandatory upgrades is a little vulnerable. I'm not sure if he has a barrier in front of the roto turret. I think it's a wall of static, so he may actually be able to flop the... Now, he needs the credits to be able to res the ice, so I think his best move here is to install Ash, gaining credit, and then take 2 credits. No, he looks like he might just take 3 credits, which is somewhat off. Oh no, he used Melange there. So, not a bad move. Runner drops the Femme Fatale onto the personal workshop. He's... I am impressed. He has a lot of tricks, and he thinks his tricks can win him the game, and they probably consistently win the game. It's just question the staying power. You know, this is going to be his final Femme Fatale coming into play. He still has 1 test run left in the deck, still has inside jobs. So his staying power actually comes from his ability to draw into tricks, which is rather impressive. He doesn't have the... Still, though, traps. And if you get him to run on a card and waste tricks without scoring an agenda, I can see the staying power of that deck quickly going down. So it's high-powered, but I have to play it very well. You really have to know what you're doing. And you have to guess right probably 75% of the time or more. Because when you guess wrong, you guess really wrong. So this is a good position for the Corp. He has enough credits to really install the mandatory upgrades. We still haven't seen a barrier breaker, but he has the disadvantage of the Femme Fatale, and there is an inside job. So there is a small chance, if the runner really wanted to, he could get in. But fortunately for the Corp, he doesn't have enough credits to push the Femme Fatale into play, use the inside job, and break the roto turret, really. Especially, there's a chance there's an aggressive secretary in the deck, and he just hasn't drawn into it, and this is his first time. Or, you know, the Maker's Eye probably makes that unlikely, because he saw 3 of the cards, but still. Aggressive secretary is played out of HP. It's in faction for HP. You always have to think about it. You really are gambling when you run on advanced cards out of HP. Sacrificial Construct. If HP continues to dominate in my meta, and it always is strong because it's just naturally strong, similar to how Wayland is always strong, I may have to start running Sacrificial Construct, which is not in and of itself a bad card, and it will actually have applications for Deus Ex when Deus Ex comes out, and it can save Crypsis, and I do like Crypsis, so it'll be interesting to see how how Shaper decks can make Sacrificial Construct work to their advantage. So here, the runner has to decide, does he risk letting him score whatever that is? Or does he use all of his tricks and go after it? He may not even have the money to go after it. He still has to push the Femme Fatale into play and bypass whatever is rezzed, and the Corp has a decent amount of money. So this is where, again, this is why I question the staying power of this deck. He can't run that agenda, or sorry, he can't run the remote continually. His best move may just be to take 8 credits here. He would have to pay 8. He has all of his actions, so what he can do is take 6 credits, bringing him up to 14. His 8 credits, take 9 credits to push off of the Femme. Though I'm surprised he didn't take a tick off at the beginning of the turn. It'd be 9 credits, he diesels his first action. Wow. Okay, well, that just throws the math out the window. He assumes that is not an agenda. Or would appear to assume that is not an agenda. And keep in mind, he does have 3 brain damage. So he has to either play these cards or lose them. The Ace-Ups finally draws into it for the rabbit holes. He hasn't seen any link, so that would be a pretty solid move here. I would have to drop the battering ram on the personal workshop if I were him. Yep, there goes the Ace-Ups. And then I'm going to assume one of his last 2 clicks is going to be dropping the battering ram on the workshop and then taking 2 credits because he chose to forfeit that agenda. I was going to do the math out on whether or not he would be able to get there, but it looks like he wasn't going to be able to. So there's the battering ram on the workshop, and his final tick is probably 2 credits.
Brawl wasn't good as a competitive medium.
There it is, and he passes it back to the Corp. Now, Corp can just biotic labor out his personal upgrades and get an additional action. So this is going to be a 5-action turn for the Corp, which is rather amusing to me. So here, I would assume he's going to score the mandatory upgrades. Bang. 1 more action remaining. He can install something and get a credit. He's just accumulating some tags so that he can actually keep your... Oh, jeez. He installs an Adonis campaign. The runner still can win here by running Archives, but I doubt he's going to run Archives. I doubt he's even tempted to do so at this point. There's a small chance that could... That's not an agenda, sorry. There's a little chance that's a 3-point agenda. It could be a 4-point agenda. Or it could be another mandatory upgrades. But from the runner's perspective, it's not worth it. He doesn't have the credits to protect it. It's probably not an agenda. Unless he's being really aggressive and somewhat foolhardy. You'd have to be somewhat foolhardy to try and score that right now. So that's why, sometimes you try and call the runner's bluff, You think they think it's double thing. They think you're playing cautiously, so you flip the script to play aggressively, and they have to call your bluff, or you punish them for it. So that's how the HB deck won the first game. So we'll see if he flips the script a little here and gets aggressive there, just to try and change the dynamic he's been playing by. Again, you're seeing the deck has slowed down now that a lot of its tricks have been used, and I'm not surprised by that. He effectively went all in on that R&D run and got nothing. He could have won the game there. I'm not sure the odds were particularly high based on what we know of the game. They were high for him because he didn't know. So I'm not going to say it was a bad move, but in the context of what we had known, there was not a great chance of him winning a game off of that. There were a lot of agendas already introduced into play. We know the Corp has a couple still in hand, so it was a good play. Probably should have won him the match. He just didn't get lucky, and luck does play a part in this game. So here he infiltrates and sees the Adonis. So I would bet he was considering running on that, and that is one of the reasons Infiltrate is so powerful. Without Infiltrate, you have to gamble much more. It can save you a ton of credits, and in this case, it saves him wasting a Femme Fatale. So Infiltrate is a great call. There are some people in my meta trying to convince me to not play it. Really, just one guy. I could almost never take it out of my deck, though, simply because you can see right here just how powerful it is. You don't waste your time doing something stupid. Draws for his second action. He can't really. He could make a run somewhere, but there's not a huge benefit. If I were him, I'd probably just take 4 credits, and try and do something next turn. The Adonis campaign is trouble, so there is benefit to him running the Adonis campaign, but not now. The benefit would be next turn because the corp would have paid to res it. But you also run the risk that they install ice, so there's always a back and forth on, is it better to run now, is it better to run later after you find some information. He chooses to run HQ. Good run, good choice. He didn't get anything out of R&D. I'm not sure if it's a good choice. He doesn't know what's in HQ, and at this point, there could be nothing in there. There's nothing. I don't feel there's anything saying that the corp has a bunch of agendas in hand. So this is. It's never bad to run somewhere, but at the same time, it can be a bit risky to run when you don't know the benefit. Here he has to drop the Dinosaurus into play because he doesn't have the MU to flat out install the battering ram. So he pays for both and accesses a single card. Now we know he could have actually won the match there. Sorry, not the game, the match. Again, because I believe there are some agendas in the corp's hand. So, bit of a risk, good play. The Chaos Theory is playing to win the match, and he's getting unlucky. He's making good choices, but getting unlucky. I don't know running HQ was the best choice, but considering that's an Adonis and not an agenda, and he has mandatory upgrades, it definitely wasn't the worst choice. And you can see the reason he did it was to emergency shut down Giannis. So that just makes it even better that he could have just won the game there, in addition to getting to shut down Giannis. Very, very well played by the runner. Corp draws into a Melange. Forget if he has a Vitruvius in his hand, but if he does, here he reses the Adonis. He did forget the window to res the Adonis, but the, again, forgiving runner allowed him to do so. And then scores the Vitruvius because he has the 4 actions for mandatory upgrades. So again, HB has become very good at fast advance, though they do it drastically differently than NBN. So Jinteki, HB, and NBN all have fast advance builds now. Even Wayland to a degree, because once they score Project Atlas with a couple of tokens, they can just push out hostile takeovers. So the runner's in a bit of a bind here. He has to score soon, because he has to dictate R&D. If he can dictate R&D, there is a chance he will still win the game. But because the corp has 4 actions, the game is heavily in his favor. Still can run archives and win the match, which is somewhat of an irony. If I were the runner at this point, I would probably do so, because there is a very good chance he wins the game next turn, and I want to get as many match points as I can. So I would run archives, but he chooses not to do so. Looks like he may be considering running R&D. He has been sacking Aesop's pawn shops to get late game money. He may choose to run the remote, which would be interesting. We don't know what's remaining, but there is 1 beta test and 2 Vitruvius on the board, and I think the other scored card for the runner is a mandatory upgrade. So there are still 3 quick score agendas in the deck, and Private Security Force he could Biotic Labor to win the game as well. But he doesn't have enough credits to do so right now. So the runner looks like, rather than try and dictate what he's drawing, he may be under the impression that there's still an agenda in hand. And he just misses, seeing a victor, and passes it back to the corp. Nope, sorry. There are a couple of actions remaining. This is, my camera work was not top-notch in this game. But they did a lot of thinking, so there was a lot of thinking. Less table talk at this game. It was kind of funny. The tournament winner talked a lot more once he scored the mandatory upgrades than before he did. So here, looks like he makes a run on R&D, does not score anything. Again, he's playing high percentage, he's just not getting lucky. He's doing what the deck needs to do to win, he just can't find the agendas. It's unfortunate. This is where luck, and he doesn't have the best sustain.
Never want to run out.
You know, this is a trick deck. Not a bad build at all. It's a very good build. It's just he's burnt out all of his tricks, and now he's just kind of most of his tricks, and now he's just relying on straight up running. And it's not built as heavily on straight up running. So you know, no nerve agents, no mediums. It's built to make high percentage plays, and if luck is against him, luck is against him. So he runs HQ, seeing the victor again. That's somewhat irony. 3 credits off, draws into the victor. So there are no agendas in his hand, so obviously there was no worry there. He had no chance of scoring anything. It was a good play to run R&D.
So many credits.
He can't win the game here.
I
He can
guess I
precog.
guess
His best move here is to precog, because what he can do is put something trashable on top of the deck, or maybe he'll see a biotic labor, put that on top of the deck, draw into an agenda, and then biotic labor out the agenda.
3 versus a card I'll never miss.
So he's going to, looks like, trash the Giannis here, because it's a lot of credits, and he needs those credits to win the game, with the potential biotic labor. He should precog here.
It's that time.
I will admit I have a little advanced knowledge of what actually happens in this game, because this did just happen yesterday, the day before I'm doing the commentary. But precog is his best move here. And there it goes. One. So sees another precog. My goodness. You can't get much better than that when you're trying to close out. Oh, no agendas and another precog and a biotic labor. You can see it is a really... he's shaking because it's a really odd precog, but it's a very good precog. You know, if I were him, I would probably put that 5th precog on the bottom, put the biotic labor probably before it, and I'm just going to aggregate credits and let the runner waste their time. At this point, he's essentially won the game, unless that second precog gets no agendas or all agendas. There's still time in the game, but the runner can't do anything to win at this point, except medium demolition run. So this is a very top-heavy Chaos Theory deck. I take that back. You can still run Archives and win the game. It's good that the HB isn't calling attention to that by installing Ice on Archives. Tries it to a second precog. I'm a little surprised he put that precog there, but you know, he can just power through his cards and do whatever he wants at this point. There's almost no way he can lose this game. Installs him a lodge. That's just rude. Oh, goodness. Because now he puts the runner in a bind. If it's a 4-point agenda like Private Security Force, and he doesn't run it, he loses. And if he does run it, he wins, if it's an agenda. So that was just, I mean, that's perfect. That's borderline perfect play by the HV player. He puts so much of an onus on the runner to run that card, because he can win the game on it, or he can lose the game if he doesn't run it. That's just a beautiful play right there. I am thoroughly I just love that play. Runs his second precog, so he's drawing almost guaranteeing to the runner that he has an agenda somewhere, either in play or in his hand. That's just great play right there. That should have bugged out the runner enough that he's going to do something that gains him nothing here and lose. The only disadvantage here is if the runner had a Maker's Eye, the corp may have just lost himself the game. Unlikely, because the runner doesn't have a ton of credits, but possible. So there was still a bit of a gamble to that. A Maker's Eye could shut him down here. Runner takes credits from Aesop's, I believe, and uses 2 of his clicks to take more credits. This is really just a wait it out. He could vamp and try and stop the biotic labor, but I don't think it would. Well, actually, that would be a pretty powerful move here. So he draws a toll booth, and it's really simple. Draws a card, biotic labor, install the beta test, and win. And that is the game there. So the way it works is you mandatory draw. Drew for 1, having 3 actions remaining. Biotic labor, increasing him to 4, install, scoring the beta test, and there are his 8 points. That is the game. Very, very well played towards the end. There you have it. An HB Chaos Theory deck wins. Not much of a shocker considering it was a mirror match. But you will notice there were pretty significant differences in the two decks. The tournament-winning HB deck was very big on ice. Did not use a gimmicky build. Not to say that the Trick of Light deck was bad. It was very well built. But Trick of Light is obviously more of a gimmick because HB's strength is its ice. And this deck really focused on that strength. Ice and economy. This deck was pure ice and economy, whereas the other deck was very combo heavy, and you saw him drawing a lot, and he didn't have the big economy, but he did have the Trick of Lights to do the fast advance. And then you also saw two very different variations, not dramatically different, but different variations on Chaos Theory. One was very high on tricks, taking advantage of the smaller deck and allowing him to draw into tricks faster and play them very consistently, whereas the other was more into straight running. It had the tricks, but it also had a much higher level of sustain and a bit of more aggressive play. So, very good match, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to bring you another one of these next month. Thanks for watching.